First session in the studio. I can't. God knows.
Was it that long ago?
It was a long time ago. I think the first session was with Beethoven.
Oh, right, yeah.
That was a long time ago now.
Puppy.
I don't know. I think it's always just been. I mean, percussion is such a vast area that you can only really hope to scratch the surface. You know, in your lifetime. You know, and I could live to be 1,000 and still see another peak to be assailed. You know?
Another shaker to buy.
That's it. So I mean, you know, jack of all trades works to a certain point, and I think, but an open-minded approach and a willingness to kind of just listen to people, and you know, space, knowing what is applicable at an applicable time. We're saying earlier about this percussionist in Los Angeles, Ralph McDonald, who turned up to a session, and the producer said to him, "Oh, listen to the track." He listens to the track. He says, "Okay, Ralph, what do you think it needs?" And he says, "Well, actually, I think it's complete as it is. It doesn't need anything." And he says, the producer says, "That's exactly what I thought. I just wanted to hear it from you." And pays him, and he goes, "Oh."
There you go.
So
fantastic.
Yeah. What about you?
It's funny you should say that about Ralph McDonald, because I was lucky enough to work with the late great Phil Ramone, the producer, and he hired he hired him in with doing all the Barbra Streisand and working on with Billy Joel and stuff, and he said that he used to hire Ralph McDonald, and he used to come in and he used to say exactly the same thing. If he didn't need anything on, he would say it doesn't need anything. There's no space really. I'm not going to add anything to that track, and I think it's having that discipline.
It's leaving your ego at the door as well, and realising that you're only a small cog in a big wheel, you know.
Yeah. And a CD release, they wouldn't. The albums I didn't play on.
It's true. But
got paid for.
What he actually did is even the tracks that he didn't. Apparently, this is what Phil Ramone's told me. Even the tracks that he didn't actually record on, he didn't end up recording on. They would play him the track, and he'd put his headphones on and just play a shaker along with it. And then he'd be listening to the track. He'd never heard it if there was nothing written out or anything. And then he'd stop and he'd go, "Yeah, I feel we can work on it," or "No, there's nothing really more that I can do."
It's a good one. I may have even heard that, because I think, just as another little tip, often the way into a tune, I don't know if you guys do I often will do exactly that. I'll probably play a shaker first, just to go through the tune, show them the influence that the shaker could have if it's somebody doesn't fully understand, and then I'm thinking what could complement. It's a great way.
It also sets up your time zone as
well. Of course, your own little click, you know.
Definitely. And you've got something to build on. You know,
Absolutely.
If you go in there, it's like the Steve Gadd thing where he says he goes into a session and the first thing he, invariably plays is just boom, Gadd, and boom, Gadd, because you've got something to build on. You've got somewhere to go.
Exactly, and it takes confidence to do that.
Yeah, it does.
It takes a little bit of time.
Because if you just met the people.
Yeah.
I think you have to see it abstract, though. You see it outside of your, without your personality involved.
Absolutely, egoless.
That's why I said the sound module, because it becomes like an abstract thing.
Yeah.
If you think of yourself like that,
no, it's true.
You know, press my buttons.
Yeah.
And again, if you remember that it's about a piece of music, not you.
That's true.
You know, that's a biggie, isn't it? You know, and I definitely made those mistakes when I was much younger. I kept trying to. Just heard a great record by one of my heroes, any of the people we've all mentioned, the great percussionists, are going, "I want to do that on this." Didn't really have the same facility, so I'm trying to cram it on, and a few very nice, polite producers would go, "Let's just," learning quickly and realising it's okay. Like I said earlier, just a tambourine here on this chorus will suffice. It's cool, and when you start to understand that and then take pride in that and be confident and make that feel really good.
It takes experience, though, doesn't it, to get to that stage?
It does.
You're there in the studio with a load of people looking
through
a window at you.
Magic, and you're like, "Oh, what do I do?"
But the whole track with the bell on the last note. That takes confidence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As much as the schooling thing is involved as well. I mean, you listen to, a lot of the reggae artists, and you listen to their percussionists.
Absolutely.
You think about, we're talking about gear. Those are the creative, for me. Being able to play grooves out, play bottles, play. Those little. It's like we're jamming. We're just
Bob Marley,
dead easy. Like that. But you take the little out of it.
Yeah,
it's like a little guitar riff.
It's a different, and that's so much part of the song. As our roles of percussionists, it's about when when he went in and heard that track, and he just thought, I'm going to put this on, you know,
Yeah.
and then everybody went, wow, that sounds amazing. Can you do that every 4 bars, you know?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, no worries.
That's
Yeah.
about.
But the confidence.
Got two teaspoons and a bottle. You know, and then all of a sudden a little bottle, and all of a sudden it's high pitched, it's got the resonance, you know, and that's the kind of thing that for me, that's the kind of thing how we can be musical.
Yeah.
Like
Totally,
that, you know.
totally.
It's funny. A funny story that I have with that is that there was one session I'd gone to, and I hadn't done anything. I was just had got there, and I didn't realise they were listening back to the track. They had the studio mics on, and I was just emptied out a box of shapes and it's done. And then the guy runs in. Wow! What was that?
yeah.
That was amazing. So I had to put it all back in. Listen to the track, and then
Tip it out
dump
again.
it on
Yeah.
down it, you know.
Yeah. I broke it now as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It was incredible. What was that?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But as far as advice to younger musicians coming up and wanting to get into sessions, I mean, I it's really a weird thing for me, because, you know, growing up in the 80s and everything sort of had percussion on it. It was either, you know, it was like, certainly in America, it was either Bashiri Johnson, Paulino da Costa, Louis Conti, Lenny Castro, the great Lenny Castro. It was all those great percussionists on the pop stuff I was listening to. And then in this country, it was Miles, it was Danny Cummins, it was Louis Jardim and Fran McCarthy, and, you know, growing up and the westernized percussion. I feel a bit sorry for the younger, because everybody there was. I mean, I believe I wasn't really around in the 80s, believe it or not, but I was growing up, and so it was like there was a lot more work.
Yeah.
Then I believe, you know, like sessions, and I mean, because obviously I'm from Manchester. Yeah. You're based obviously in London. You would have been around and seen some more of the sessions in London. You know,
I think it's just technology, isn't it? As technology's come along, and people now have the ability, producers have the ability to do everything.
Yes.
So why don't they? And they just don't pay everybody, you know, they kind of just keep it
I think
up
it's
to
also
themselves.
a lack of almost like music education.
Of course, yeah.
Because they just want the flavour of something,
Yeah.
and then they can stick a loop on out of Apple Loops or whatever of this or that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's job done.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's for percussionists to make their own world now. You know, I think that the idea of being, I mean, in the West, you know, if you look at percussion as a whole across the world, you know, I mean, it's only really here in the West that percussion's a bit part player.
Yeah.
You go to Africa, you go to India, you go
Yeah,
to the
sure.
whole of Latin America, Japan.
Yeah,
all
North
the
Africa,
countries.
Really
Morocco,
integral.
The
yeah.
majority
Yeah,
of the
course,
world, percussion is the, you know,
At
the
the
thing, the
forefront.
voice
Yeah.
of the people, you know.
Yeah.
So we're kind of a little bit disenfranchised with percussion in the West in a way, if our focus is, you know, on the pop area and what is, you know, popular music. But of course now we're in the age where we can see, everything's there available to see. So I think we have to make our own world, you know, make our own world and future out of it. But you're right in saying it's disappointing in a way that there aren't so many kind of role models like people that you mentioned that are around now in with such proliferation.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of great players, and obviously they, you know, I mean, I know some great players that have tried to do things in London and it's not really worked out for them, so they've gone to the West End, or, you know, or they're, you know, so they're getting a regular income, and because there's not enough sessions, and you know, it's obviously probably around that time there was a lot of the bands that were out in the charts all had record deals and quite big advances, big record deals, and they could afford to start paying session musicians to come in like that. But obviously now, with all those, nobody giving out big record deals anymore.
Yeah, but by the same token, I think there's never been a better time for music. I mean, there's so much music out there, and it's not so elitist.
For hearing it, for
accessing, and it's not so elitist. You know, if you've got an idea and you're you've got no way into the business, you can come up with something, have it released, get people interested in it.
Totally.
And I think that's a great thing.
That's a great thing. That's counterbalanced with it free at source, though. So that is
a problem,
that
of course.
strips out
Generation
the
of course it does.
Potential for young players to
develop.
earn in the industry.
Yeah,
so it's a it'd be interesting to see in 30 or 40 years' time what opportunities there are for music makers generally, because
perhaps I mean that's always going to be a problem for younger people, how they kind of live while they're trying to establish themselves as musicians, and get to a point where they're going to earn a living. But that was the same, you know, when we were young.
Yeah, I was going to say, I shudder to think.
Was it not? I mean,
what
it was,
opportunity,
you know.
But there's more opportunity then than. I mean, you know, I think what you said earlier, the versatility, I think, is a really important thing, and I think that's really more important now than it ever was. That probably wasn't so important when we started.
No.
out,
I think you're right. Yeah.
But now it's like super important. So I think to make a good living as an up and coming player, you've got to be versatile and really prepared to adapt to rapid change. More rapid change than we
either
saw.
get really good at another instrument. So maybe if you're a drummer, we could play any instrument, but possibly the logical thing is to play bass. I know there are a lot of great drummers who play great bass. So you've got that, you can hop that thing. Also maybe technically, studio-wise, make yourself more adept in the studio.
Yeah.
The remote session thing, you know.
Absolutely.
That's definitely the way in which you know you're going to survive. I think if you can, and I think it's really healthy to learn another instrument. Again, understanding what's happening over the other side of the room, either the guitarist, the bass player, the singer, you know, sing a song. You know, I forced myself to it wasn't really a song, but I forced myself to sing something, to just put myself in the studio and go, right, I've got to deliver a performance, as poor as it was, so that I could just understand what the singer's doing, and I, you know, I'm amazed I didn't do it sooner.
What's interesting with that as well is that for me, when I started performing with Tabla, it was such a different thing, because before I'd been behind a drum set. And then suddenly there's nothing in the way. And I would like the
exposed.
Well, it was just that much harder to go on stage and perform because there's nothing in front of you.
Totally,
You know, and it's interesting to know that, you know, a singer will feel like that.
It really does. Yeah.
Or even a bass player or
whatever. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. No, that's a you've got to leave that in.
But technology has given people the ability to do that. There are now quite a lot of drummers and percussionists who do solo shows and do triggering to visuals and lighting changes and all the rest of it. And that can only be a good thing as well.
No,
so
absolutely,
circumvent the being part of a band thing and be a mobile unit on your own and only be responsible for yourself and do your own product.
There seems to be a lot more live shows as well. Seems to be a lot more of the older bands going back out live. There seems to be a lot of that. I mean, I was lucky enough to do some shows with Imagination, with Mel Gaynor, you know, on drums, and who was one of my idols, and it's great to play with him. So a lot of the older bands, you know, like Sister Sledge, Imagination, and, you know, to get to play with them, because, you know, before, years back, in the late 90s, I would never have even dreamt that I would be playing with those bands, you know, and how it's changed, how it's completely changed, music, all the older bands like you, with ABC, you know, was touring with ABC, still touring, which is amazing, you know. But there's but yeah, as far as social media is concerned, and about being able to put things out and how you can put yourself across as an artist, I know Pete does a great job. He's a lot more on it than I am, you know, and we are, you know. Maybe we need to be more proactive in that role. Pete's fantastic at that. Obviously, Ash Soane's fantastic at that. You know, that he inspires me when I watch his videos, because they're really musical. You know, watching what he puts out. They're really, really musical. And on the conga side, is it Eric Perez?
Yeah, Eric Perez.
Eric Perez is fantastic, you know.
Yeah, he does 2 a week or something, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does like 2 a week tuitional, and they're also... It's not
he's got a great personality.
He's got, it comes across, he delivers it so well, you know. That's really, really good. You know, they're the kind of things that I would look, that inspire me, modern-wise, you know, like, as opposed to seeing people playing drums and percussion 100 miles an hour. You know, and they were showing the chops off. It's really about. It still has to have that musicality.
It's the spirit as well. You're getting inside someone's spirit. I think that's what, you know, if you go back to, you know, Nana Vasconcelos, for example, and Airto and all these players, it's obviously they've got great skills and abilities and everything, but it's that spirit that comes out in their
they've got big personalities.
100%, Sure. I remember listening to a Weather Report record, and Bobby Thomas did just one slap on the conga at a particular point in the tune, and it blew me away for so long. I was literally on loop. listening to this thing, going, why would he do that there? Why? But why does that feel so good?
Yeah.
You know, and that was a real education for me. Not, you know, not all the other things he could do, but just just at the right point in this tune. I'm just.
And it's amazing because I remember listening to Marvin Gaye album and Eddie Bongo Brown playing the beginning of was it I Want You, I think, or maybe just listening to that and him opening that up and just the slap and the way, and it's like Bashiri Johnson on Never Too Much. You know, when that groove comes in and Yogi Horton starts playing the kit and then he starts playing the conga, just that first slap, it just falls right on the snare drum. Yeah. And it almost sounds like that high pitch, like it's a woodblock. It just instantly makes you want to move and makes you want to dance. And that for me is where I really started and where I come from, that angle. Yeah. And listening to like Earth, Wind and Fire and how much percussion was in that and the way it interlocked. And I always wanted to just try and recreate that when I played.
Absolutely, yeah, you know. And sound is so important.
It is
so important. Feel and sound over chops all day long. Of course, I think we all know that. You know, you come to it, and it's good when you do, because I sit opposite guitarists and bass players and drummers and everything else, and I'm just like, why is that working? And it's the placement and it's the sound they're making. And when that penny dropped as well, I mean, again, I'm constantly pursuing that and trying to get it better, but
we all are.
Yeah, we all are. But that definitely was a big one. Like, why is that so good? Well, it's actually just because it sounds so sweet. Paulina on some of those records he did, Don Elias sound on Jacko's stuff, his sound, you know, killing. You know, a Bata there, and just the way sort of dripping feel he had on certain things. You know, Bobby Thomas makes bongos and congos sound different to all the other guys, which still is a mystery to me. I don't know if you've really tune into what he was doing with Weather Report. He's still playing two congas and some bongos, but he just doesn't sound like anybody else. No. But he found a way to make a particular kind of sound. That kind of
having his own identity on it.
Yeah, which is important. You know, if you can do that, that's the hardest thing. I think.
Of course, the hardest thing, the most satisfying thing as well. Yeah.
Yeah, really.
And hard to, you know, particularly the swing stuff. It's very hard to make anything work with percussion on that.
Oh yeah, very much
really
so. Yeah,
hard.
that's a task.
I remember you doing the Sister Sledge thing, which was, you know, thinking of you and Sammy Figueroa, you know, who played on all the Chic stuff, and he played, and it's amazing because you took him out of the mix when Tony Thompson's playing drums. If you take him out of the mix, the records don't sound the same neither. Yeah, you know, and me having to recreate that playing with them with the orchestra. You know, I was so, you know, I had to be, you know, to do some homework doing that and pay homage to him because he played it. You know, it's about paying homage to, you know.
Yeah, that's a good point. That touches on also not. Sometimes I hear people going, you know, they're afraid to listen to others and learn from records, and I don't want to be that. I don't want to sound like that person. I know other people have talked about this, but I think it's really important. Don't be afraid. Go and learn. Go and understand. I wanted to understand Minu. You know, I want to understand his head. Yeah. You know, I'm very influenced by him. I think. You know, and I'm happy to do so. Look at it, learn it, take the concept and see what you can do with it. You know, I mean, don't be afraid of that. Some people are thinking.
I think that's kind of often overlooked, is the importance of the historical perspective of everything. Yeah. You know, and the realisation that the sort of drum kit and percussion in its present format has only been in existence for 100 years. Yeah. And you know, particularly if, I mean, we talk about who would you recommend for younger players to listen to, you know. And I mean, I suppose it really depends on the genre, but if you, orchestral stuff, if you go back to James Blades, people like that, his great book, Percussion Instruments and Their History, or Emil Richards' Studio Techniques, any of that stuff. I mean, there's so much in there, and those books came out 40 years ago, you know. And it's often overlooked. Timeless stuff, which is often overlooked by YouTube, who often you're kind of, what's the latest thing or the fastest fill? Or yeah. I mean, who would you recommend that younger players listen to kind of, you know, get a...
None of us can tell us.
Who is the master percussionist? That was the question. That was the question that came up.
That's
I think.
I don't think you can nail it down to one.
No, you can't. Of course.
You know, I think it's down to who influences you. You know.
Yeah, like what music do you want to make? Where do you want to go on your journey? And I think then recognise the people that have gone there before. You know, and yeah, well, that's certainly what I did. I mean, but there's some obscure things. I was trying to remember earlier. There's a Bill Withers record called Adjustments, which was just a really big record for me. It was kind of an obscure one of his, but it's a really nice sounding record, and I cannot remember the name of the percussionist, but I learnt many years later, I've told a few friends this one, that I thought it was one conga player, but it was actually two. but I learnt to play the two parts.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
brilliant.
You know, I was like, I don't understand this. I mean, obviously, it was an
Yeah.
abbreviation, but I was like, that's such a great groove. But
Yeah,
I was
it's
just
great.
like befuddled by it for months and months and months. But I just obsessively found a way eventually to learn that part. And actually, it was all back to front. It was completely different and wrong. And it was actually two people that did it.
But it was
I-
your version
But it
of
was
it.
my version,
Exactly.
and I
Which is
learned
important.
something.
Of course,
That's
yeah.
the valuable
That's the
thing,
value, yeah.
and that's an old record. You know.
Yeah.
I can more talk about influences. Minu's a massive influence for me. Bobby Thomas, Badrina, Alex Acuna. A lot of the records that Alex did, obviously playing with Weather Report, and then all the pop stuff, Al Jarreau. I couldn't really pick one person. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many. But there's obviously all the Puerto Ricans and Cubans, Richie Flores, Giovanni, just mind-blowing conga technique. But for me, I was listening to jazz and world music, and so there's djembes, there's udus, there's everything, there's every kind of
Yeah.
instrument. So it's quite hard for me to pick it up. But I was thinking about it. I think None of Us Vasconcelos was the most exotic percussionist I'd heard when I first started. That certain records my dad was playing, I was going, what the hell is that? What is he playing? And why is it feeling that way? And the soundscaping
Yeah.
and the mystery of like where, like you said much earlier about like somebody might just hit a bell at a certain point and it takes you to Bali.
Exactly, yeah.
And you're like, you know, again, I'd listen to Weather Report obsessively and it would take me outside of myself and take me to another country in an exotic place I'd never heard, or even another planet. But it was the percussion. It was Badrina and Alex and all those
Yeah.
guys, the little things they were doing, the little world
The
influences.
little
of
flavours, the little
flavors.
getting your mind active.
Yeah,
And-
but I agree. I don't necessarily think there's just great exponents at certain instruments. But people who've got great voices and played on great records were the ones that really inspired me. And Nana, all the ECM stuff, that blew my mind. So he was,
Yeah, Bush Dance.
his own
Kind of
albums and his own.
change the direction of stuff as well. You know, people who.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, Colin Walcott.
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
With Oregon.
Amazing.
Who was you never would say he was a technical player
No.
at all.
No.
But
Yeah.
you know, he had all these things
Yeah,
that he brought
absolutely.
in. Probably the first real proper world hybrid player there was. you
Yeah,
know.
I totally agree with that.
And then
yeah.
obviously, you know, Trelock following on
Trillock,
from
yeah, of
him.
course.
John Bergamo, who was for me the
Yeah,
pioneer.
it was with frame
even
drums.
before
Yeah.
Glenn Velez, you know,
Yeah.
but then obviously Glenn Velez, Lane Redmond, and all
Yeah.
that people that followed on.
And Mickey Hart has done a lot of with
Mickey
them
Hart,
as well.
but
you know.
still, yeah, he's put
He's
projects
put projects together.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
He's been really instigator in that world. You know.
And then with the Indian thing, you know, Harry Shankar was a great tabla
Kanjira
player. Kanjira player,
Yeah.
sorry. Zakir, the amazing tabla player.
Of course, yeah.
Just all these incredible players. And at the moment, Zohar Fresco. I don't know if you've seen
Yeah,
Zohar
I know,
Fresco.
yeah. Framed
No, the name.
Framed on
Yeah,
player.
okay.
Ridiculous.
Yeah,
just
amazing,
Right.
totally
Wow.
mind blowing. So I didn't really come out of the Latin thing so much.
No.
The Latin jazz kind of, I came out of the world
The
kind of
world
Indian
thing,
thing, which was
yeah.
slightly different.
About influences for you?
I think all of the above. You know, I did get into a lot of stuff that James Blades did, Nigel Shipway, Emil Richards, more percussive kind of pop players. Danny Cummings was the guy to be when you were
For
a
all of us.
teenager. He
Yeah.
was the guy who had
was.
all the gigs. How do you get a major pop gig? And
Get it off Danny. Ring him.
you know, I got to be better than Daddy. How to do that? But I think, I'm just trying to learn from lots of different people, try and see what they had in their palette of sounds, really,
Yeah.
and take bits from everybody and try and make it your own.
Yeah, that's key, isn't it? Really?
You know, that's what I still try and do. You know, still learning, still developing,
Never
and
stops.
life isn't long enough.
No.
Yeah.
And there's too,
Any
there's too much to
standout
do.
players for you that really-
Certainly as a pop thing, when I was a kid, I was really into Queen, I was really into Buddy Rich stuff, I was really
Yeah.
into Stuart Copeland. As regards tabla was, yourself, Zakir Hussain, certainly his father.
Yeah.
You mentioned Harry Shankar is the standout Kanjira
Yeah.
player. I think everybody agrees on that.
Yeah.
Minu Sonelo for his Udu playing, and None of Us Vasconcelos for his berimbau and his kashishi stuff.
And his voice as well.
His
the
voice,
stuff.
yeah, his ability to kind of mesmerise and own the room as
Yeah,
a solo
amazing.
performer,
Yeah.
and even own a town square with 1,000 people in it, you know,
Yeah,
and get them
yeah.
all interacting.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, the list is. I'm sure I've missed off a lot of people, but
Yeah.
Yes.
and you?
Well, how long have we got? No, same. Danny Cummings in this country, certainly. Danny
Do an
Cummings,
interview
of
with
course.
Danny.
Yeah, definitely do an interview with Danny. He's busy
love
with
him.
Mark Knopfler at the moment. I think Pete, obviously, yourself,
yeah.
yourself, who I've known for. You're only 28,
no,
aren't you?
20, yeah,
I've known you for 30 years, maybe.
I was born in 1920.
Yeah, I've not probably known yourself because you know
Was
as
it working with Bach? Yeah.
as an aspiring musician, and I'm very lucky that I can call you all my friends because you're one of the busiest guys about, and you've always worked, always worked, and anybody looking, the advice that you've given for a young aspiring percussionist and drummer. Should really...
Very kind.
No, and I really mean that. But yeah, yourself, obviously, Carl van den Bosch. Carl, who's fantastic and a lovely man, even though he supports Tottenham. Carlos Edwards, who supports Chelsea, so we'll never forget about that. But he's a lovely guy. And then, and obviously, there are so many who feel very privileged to be here because there's so many great percussionists in the UK. And it's great that we get a chance to have a talk. So they need to have a mention as well. Also,
Satin,
of course, Satin,
Yeah,
Satin, everybody,
of course,
yeah.
Will,
Will, of course,
lovely
up
young
and
Will.
coming,
Yeah,
up and coming.
Yeah.
I mean, fantastic,
yeah.
ridiculous. And very blessed to call him a friend. America, the great Louis Conte, who's always been my idol. Bashiri Johnson, who just makes things, who just is ridiculous on track. Paulino Di Costa, and of course the great Sammy
Castro.
Figueroa, Lenny Castro. How can you forget Lenny?
Lenny.
Yeah, he's a
Ray
monster.
Cooper needs to mention.
Ray, of
Ray
course.
Cooper.
Yeah.
I mean,
Ayrton Moreira, we've got to mention him again.
Yeah.
We've got to. Who is a pioneer with Nana.
Without a doubt.
And those, everybody. Sorry if we've missed anybody out.
There's too many, aren't there?
There is too many,
Yeah. But isn't that
Mungo
brilliant?
Jackson,
Oh,
Steve Croon,
yeah.
Steve Thornton,
Steve Thornton.
yeah, Steve Thornton, yeah,
Thornton.
played with him, yeah.
Kevin Ricard,
Yeah.
Pete
Yeah.
Colpia. Does anybody know Pete? He's a fantastic
Yeah, I know him,
percussionist.
yeah.
Pete Colpia.
We've got Dave Patman here as well.
Dave
Great
Patman,
bongo
Dave
player.
Patman, yeah, fantastic.
Trailblazer
Yeah.
for the Latin
Dave
community.
Assel in
and
Manchester.
Snowboy.
Snowboy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Snowboy.
London, yeah.
Shovel.
Shovel, Snowboy.
Yeah.
Of
I
course.
mean, Sudder.
Yeah.
There's those hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Davide Giovanni.
Davide.
This was amazing.
Killer. Yeah.
Amazing. Singing,
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, where do we stop? I mean, really, what we should do is just put tribute on your track on your album. They're all on
pretty
there.
much, yeah.
They're basically all
everyone
listed
I
on
can
there.
think of,
Yeah, so
yeah.
big shout out to Miles's album. Listen to Tribute, the last one. Then they're all on there. The whole everybody's on
as
there.
many as I could remember.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
And a big shout out to Louise for putting rhythm back together.
Oh yeah,
And
oh
that
my
is the
word.
big one.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And James,
Yeah, and
Well done,
who
James.
has to put up with us.
Yeah, right. Yeah, amazing.
It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
James is buying the beers, I think.
Yeah, fantastic.